Okay, so on the last time I did this, I suddenly lost control of my mouse, so that was a good time. Okay, so this week we are going to expand on our design. So if you remember where we left off last week, we created a bunch of sheets. We created architectural sheets such as this. There we go. There's my 3D view of my structure sort of masked out with a generic exterior wall. So here's an architectural view. We also did our floor plan view. Let's see, and we also did our some structural views. The footings and foundation plan, level two framing plan, and let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. Although we shouldn't, in my level two framing plan, it looks like it's still showing my exterior wall. So I'm going to go to my level two framing plan and I can type in VV and I can turn on my architecture filter and just go to walls. Let's see there and turn that off. Hit OK. There we go. So the structural plans are only showing structural information. There's no architectural information in there. It's only showing structural. Roof flaming plan. Roof framing plan is showing the top of the wall as well. So I'll do the same thing in there. I'll just make sure that's off. Now, if yours were on in the last assignment, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You can turn it off for now. But just rule of thumb to remember in your mind: the structural plan should only show structural information. Architectural will show walls and things that you in your head, I'm sure, think of more as architectural. Okay, so let's go to level one floor plan. I'm going to close out my other views. There we go. If you haven't already, now I named the 3D view that we put on the sheet 3D architectural, but I'm going to make a new fresh 3D view. So you do that by clicking the little house up there. I already did that, so I have it here. And I just want to set up this view a little bit to help us visualize. So I'm going to hide all my levels. So I'm going to select one of the levels, right click, hide in view category. There we go. Just so I can see the building that I have going on. And I am also going to change my graphic display options so I can make it even more readable. So I'm going to say shaded, smooth lines with anti-aliasing, which will smooth out all the line work. And I'm going to turn on my ambient shadows. That helps me see depth. I'll hit OK. Okay, there we go. Now I'm sure you guys can visualize it much better than. Let's see if this does anything. I don't think it will on a 3D view on the video. So, okay, so we have this exterior wall going around here that right now is a generic 8-inch wall, right? So we're in the conceptual design phase and we don't really know exactly what that wall is made up of. We don't know what materials maybe the client has picked. We haven't really worked that out. But let's make a decision at this point and just sort of move forward with it. And we can always change the wall type later. But in doing so, I want to show you some interesting things about wall types and how we work with them. Okay, so I have one of my walls selected. So just select one of your walls. Don't select everything. Let's just do this one here. Okay, so right now, as you see up in my type selector over here, it's a generic 8-inch wall. But if I click the type selector, there's all kinds of walls in here. Okay, so let's pick the top. Let's pick exterior brick on CMU, and I'll tell you exactly what that means and what all the layers are as in a minute here. But exterior wall brick on concrete masonry unit. So maybe some of you live in a house before, oh, I'd say the 80s or 90s, and the basement has blocks for walls. So it's not a poured concrete wall of any kind, it's just blocks. 8 inches high, 60 inches across. and maybe there's some cracks in there depending on how old your house is, things like that. That's what a concrete masonry unit is. So that's what CMU stands for. So I'm going to click that. Now, my wall is still selected, but look, it got a lot thicker. Okay, so I'm going to just click off in space. And let's see what we got here. If I zoom in a little further, I can see that this is in fact a brick wall. So the red towards the outside is the brick tone, but one thing that happened, right, was that my wall got thicker. So I had an 8-inch wall, and now it went like, say to a 1 foot 2-inch wall or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but how do I know where that's placed on my floor plan? So let's go to level one floor plan and take a look. Now, if you remember, so I zoomed into the side here where that wall is. Here's my 8-inch generic, and here's that thicker one now. But you remember when I placed this right on that number one grid line. So now I want to reposition this wall. So I'm going to go to my modify align tool and move. Now, if you saw that, I'm hovering over and I want to align to this center line, but I can't select it, right? It's like, hey, center of the wall, is that what you want? No, I don't want the center of the wall. I want that. So I hit tab to sort of move between those. Click once to select that reference line and then click the edge of the wall. Now that wall is placed in the right position, okay? Thicker, and it's going from the grid line out. So this one, for example, I want to go from this grid line up. So let's look at that. So let's look at our wall. So there's my new wall. That looks good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all the walls. And let's change them all at once. Brick on CMU. Click in space. Okay, a couple interesting things are happening. Right here, brick looks good. It's not in the right position on some of the walls. Brick looks good. All this brick looks good. This one looks weird. And these three walls look a little weird. Okay, so here's what happened. The wall is simply reversed. Why Revit does that, I think maybe it's based on how you initially drew it. But basically, we need to say, hey, put the inside of the wall on the outside, and do that for all the walls that have sort of the gray outside, because that's supposed to be the inside of the wall and the brick is supposed to be on the outside. So how do we do that? So let's go and let's think, okay, so it's this wall. Ooh, this wall's still a generic wall, that's why it looked that way. So I'm going to change that to a brick on CMU. And let's see, okay, that's brick on the outside. Now let's change these three here. So let's go to the floor plan for level one. Okay, so I know that these three are flipped. So if I click the wall, there's this nifty little back and forwards arrow there. I'm just going to click that, click this wall. I'm going to click that one, click this wall, and click that. Now let's go to the 3D view, and you can see that it's all brick on the outside, all the way around. Okay, so that looks good. I think I'll do a perspective view. It's a little intense, but there we go. All the way around, brick on the outside. Now I have the right wall in there, but now I've only positioned one of the walls correctly. So I'm going to go into my level one floor plan and double check that all my walls are positioned correctly. And I can see that they're not. So I'm going to go to my align tool and move. Okay, that moved on both sides. So now I'll do this one, that one. Oop. Let's try that again. There we go. There we go. Now all my walls are exactly where I want them. They're positioned correctly. It's starting to really come to shape. I wish this wasn't so warped. Maybe there's a way I can change that. Let's try something. Okay, we'll do that later. But all right, let's go back to orthographic. There we go. So everything's looking good. The wall right now, if I look, let's see here. one thing I want to show you. I'm in my level one floor plan, so just watch along with me here. You don't have to do this, but I'm gonna make a section cut right here, just to look at this wall. All right, so here's our wall. Now, one thing to note is that the majority of our wall here, so here's the foundation wall below and the footing. And maybe I could turn on fine to really show the layers. The majority of our wall is sitting on the foundation wall. Okay, so we have all these layers that make up this wall, bricks on the outside. I understand that it's hanging out over here a little bit, and maybe there's some sort of detail where there's a steel angle that goes in here that holds up that brick, or perhaps this foundation wall will just get thicker um, later on in the project. But where it's at right now is totally fine. But the structure that's actually holding up this wall is this CMU block, which is this sort of angled cross hatching here. That's sitting right on the foundation wall, so that's got to be good. Okay, so let's do this. I'm gonna go to level one. I'm gonna delete that section. I just wanted to show you that. And yep, delete. Let's go to the 3D view. Okay, let's click one of these walls. Now, the process of turning those walls into different types of walls, that's how you do it. You just select a wall and you go up to type selector and you can sort of change things. So here's one for example, brick over CMU with metal stud. Let me just click that one so you can see what that looks like. So that is a really interesting wall type where it takes two walls, this one and this one, and puts them together at one wall, and then you can define the height of the lower wall and the height. Well, the height of the other wall will just be whatever you set it to, but you can at least define like this wall. Like I want this cool CMU base around my building, and I want the top to be brick. So I could do the same with this one. Change that to all the way down to the bottom to that stacked wall option, and there we go. A cool thing about the stacked wall option, I'm just going to undo those, is that if I made my own wall type, maybe I made two different wall types and I just made them up from scratch, I can combine them and create my own stacked wall in here. But we'll get into that in advanced Revit and sort of making your own wall types. But I am going to show you a little bit about that now. So that is the process by which how you just change walls and sort of play around with that. Now, every time you change a wall, you will have to sort of reposition it in your floor plan. Um, and that comes down to how the wall was initially drawn and the location line from which it was drawn. So let me just show you one thing to just explain that, just so you're aware. But to me, it's not that important because you can just reposition the wall at any time. But let me just show you. So I'm just going to draw a wall right out here just to prove this point or show this point. So I'm going to go architecture wall. Let's do brick on CMU. And for location line, center line is fine. Okay, so I'm going to do center line right here. So location line setting is up here in the options bar. So I'm going to say, yeah, level one to level two, 2 foot offset. That's fine. Location line, wall center line. So when I draw it, you see how it's taking the center of the wall. Okay, so I made a wall, right? All right, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw the same wall with location line, finish face, exterior. So I'm going to click. Now I'm drawing the line from the outside face of the wall. Okay. So I'm not drawing from the center anymore. I'm drawing from the outside face. Now, if I take this wall and I make it into a different one, let's do generic 4 inch. It shrunk to wherever that line was. Okay. So it shrunk up in this case to that location line. Now, in this case, the location line is the center line. So let's see what happens there. It shrinks it, geez, camera shrinks it like this and makes it 4 inch. So if I drew all these walls from location line interior, that means every time I change them, they'll grow outward or shrink from outward in. I won't have to reposition them. So it just depends on how you want to do it. I don't really care about the location line because I sort of just place the walls and then I reposition as needed. So two different ways to do the same thing. Okay, So I'm going to select one of my walls. I'm in level one floor plan here. I'm just going to select one of my walls. Now, if I look over in the properties, it tells me what type it is. So it's the exterior brick on CMU. Um, for it tells me how it was drawn, location line. It tells me base constraint, level one. It goes up to the roof, goes 2 feet over. So it's telling me things in my properties palette. Okay, but it tells me even more. So I'm going to go to edit type right here. So what I'm saying there is I want to edit this type of wall. So I'm going to click that and this little window comes up. Okay. So if I wanted to create a new type right now that was exterior brick on CMU, because I look up here and it says the type of this is exterior brick on CMU. That's the one we're playing with. Now, if I want to make it my own and edit it in some way, I want to definitely duplicate it first. Why don't we just do that together? Yeah, we can call it exterior brick on CMU Kevin. Okay, so I'm going to call this one. Okay, so I've opened up that existing type. I've made a new one now called Kevin. And now let's go into the gooey innards of this wall and change some things. Okay. So there's a couple settings on here that we can kind of look through, but really what I really want you to click on is this guy right here. I'm sorry. Edit. It says construction, structure, edit. Okay. I'm going to click that. We get this nifty little chart. Okay. So first thing I want you to do is on the bottom left hand corner, click preview. Now we're seeing the layers of this wall. Okay, so let's start from the bottom and work our way up. Now, if you look at this chart, the top of it says exterior side, the bottom of it says interior side. So starting from the inside and working out, this is a floor plan view as if we slice the wall in half, and we're going to talk about all these layers. I'm not going to like go into a lot of things, but I'm just going to show you where they are in here. So we have first the finished layer, which is the gypsum wallboard, right? So that is drywall. Okay. Then this little 1 5/8 inch gap is a substrate called metal furring. So there's metal furring in here that is on the structure here that the drywall gets attached to. And that structure is concrete masonry units that are 7 5/8 inch thick right here. The membrane layer is 0 inches, so there's some sort of plastic or something in there. Then we have a thermal air layer of rigid insulation right here, 2 inches right on the CMU, so right to it. And then we have an air gap of 3 inches, and then we finally have brick of 3 5/8. Okay, so I've duplicated this, and right now I haven't changed anything. Okay, so let's just say that instead of 3 5/8 inch of brick, we found some weird specialty brick that is 6 inches. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. And as I put that in there, this immediately got thicker. Let's be crazy. I'm going to call it 8 inches. Okay, just so we can make a nice difference between these two. And then we also decide to increase our air gap in there by an inch. So we'll put 4 inches in there. So this wall is starting to get different, right? All right. So let's hit OK. Okay. And now we're out one layer of tools. And I want to hit OK one more time. Okay. No pun intended. So this wall is exterior brick on CMU. Kevin, this wall is brick on CMU. You can tell this changed because look, it moved, right? It thickened out a little bit. This wall that I made is thicker than that wall. So I'm going to just reposition this one and go to 3D, and it looks exactly the same because all we did was change the brick type. Brick just got thicker, but it has the appearance of exactly the same thing on here. Okay. So now what I want to show you is if I go and click on that wall, go to my type list, you'll see I have that new type in there because I did edit type duplicate. That was my first step, and I gave it a unique name, and I made that wall my own. But I want to change it back to exterior brick on CMU so it matches the rest. I'm going to double check its position, and there we go. So what I really want you to be aware of this semester, at least, is exterior wall types, how you can sort of just change them, make them your own, right? So I just showed you that, but also there's all these other wall types in here. Exterior brick on CMU is one we have. We have brick on metal stud, exterior CMU insulated. So that might be an exterior concrete masonry unit of some kind. CMU on metal stud, EFIS on metal stud. Go to your neighborhood Walmart. You'll see plenty of EFIS. Google it if you want. It's a interesting commercial product, very cheap. That's the idea behind that. We have a foundation wall of 12 inches, a bunch of generic walls that are great for sort of the initial design process, like we've done, and then a bunch of interior walls, retaining walls, soffit. I'm not exactly sure why that would be in wall because the soffit's sort of the underside of something. And then we have stacked wall at the bottom. So I showed you that one. But then we also have these curtain walls in here. Now, these are sort of glass walls, right? So if I click, um, we are going to have a whole lecture on these, but I'm just going to click one of them, curtain wall one right here. So I'm just going to click that and look at this whole wall just became a piece of glass. Okay. So that's kind of crazy, but we'll get into that. Okay. So for this first lecture and part of your assignment, I want you to take your structure and change all of the exterior walls to some exterior wall type other than generic, preferably something with brick, because I think that'll give us something to work with. So if you could choose brick on CMU, brick on metal stud, or any of these exterior CMUs, these two different ones. It's your choice. And change your view to shaded just so you can kind of see what's going on. So change your exterior walls and then reposition them as needed to be positioned exactly where they need to be in your floor plan. Okay, so the next video we'll talk about floors. All right, guys, see you in a second.